This question is an audience question. It goes first to Mr. Stuart. Do you support any changes in state law that would encourage more voter participation, longer hours, more sites for early voting, or anything along those lines? And if so, would you describe the changes you'd be willing to support to increase voter participation?
Yes. Sorry. Actually, this year, I put in a bill that was just excuse-free voting. It's not even absentee voting. It was, if you're entitled to vote in Virginia, you can go up to 30 days prior, and I wanted them to stay open on weekends and vote. You didn't have to give an excuse like you do on an absentee ballot, because frankly, I don't know why I should have to tell the government that I'm going out of town or I need to do something else in order to vote absentee. It's really none of their business. And so my bill said you can vote up to 30 days in advance of the election at the registrar's office, and you don't have to even make an excuse for doing it. The bill didn't pass, unfortunately, and I will tell you that was bipartisan. I wish I could have gotten more support from both sides for that bill, because I believe that's what we should do. We should make it easy for people to vote and to participate in our democracy.
1 minute.
I commend the senator on the 30-day no excuse. I want to give credit where due. I think that's a beautiful thing. Unfortunately, again, I'm going to ask you to look at actions, because actions speak louder than words. In 2013 and in 2017, my opponent introduced a voter ID law that many describe as very similar to the president's mythical claim that 3 million people illegally voted. The statistics are that in the last decade, there have been only 91 cases of actual voter fraud. That's 0.004%. And yet he spent money on this. But I think the most remarkable thing about the Republican agenda that just leaves me mind-boggled is that last year they passed legislation to return the right to own a firearm to former felons. So they believe that a felon can be rehabilitated to own a firearm. But when it came to passing legislation to return voting rights to former felons, it died in committee. How about that? You can be rehabilitated to own a firearm, but not to own, not to pass a vote. We need to reform this and ensure every person has equal access to voting.
30 seconds.
I don't ever recall introducing a voter ID bill. I've introduced so many bills. As I said, I've passed 140 in my name alone, so it's certainly not impossible. I do recall voting for a voter ID bill, and I do very firmly believe that you should have to show some form of identification before you vote. You have to show a form of identification to do anything in our society. And it always interests me when folks say, well, there's just no voter fraud. Well, the interesting thing is, how do you catch them if you don't know who they were? And so people commit voter fraud in every election, and we know it's a serious issue, but you can't catch them because there's no ID to identify them with. If we required people to have identification to vote, it would end the debate and the entire discussion.